Good idea.
So hi everyone,
okay.
Good morning. Thanks very much for joining us today for our Sicon webinar for Sage 200. My name's Howard Murphy. I'm Business Development Manager for DB Computer Solutions. I'm joined by Sarah Vickers from Sicon this morning, who will be showing us the advantages of utilizing their documents, document automation and invoice approval modules within Sage 200. So as I meet prospective customers and long-standing clients, I always advise them that at least every 3 to 4 years that they should revise some of the existing processes they engage in on a day-to-day basis. So inevitably, it's human nature for users to revert to more manual processes, if they can't see the solution within the system in front of them. By talking to ourselves at DB, we can show you processes already available within the package that you're actually using, but not necessarily obvious. In other cases, there are modules readily available, such as Sicon's document automation, that drastically reduces manual effort and frees up time that can be best served elsewhere. So, as mentioned earlier, our demonstration this morning relates to document automation and invoice approval. They can also be used in conjunction with some of Sicon's other modules, which I'm sure Sarah will speak briefly on. If you are interested in reviewing your existing setup or would like a more detailed demonstration, we'd be happy to provide a one-to-one session where we can properly talk to you about your business and offer you a fuller demonstration based on your needs. Just let us know in the chat. So before I hand you over to Sarah, I'd just remind you to put forward any questions through the Q&A facility via Teams or through the chat, and we'll do our level best to sort of give you answers at the end of the session. I'd also point out, if your shared screen is too small, I'd ask you to hit select view at the top of the screen, choose focus on content. Together with, I think it gives you more options to show the full screen to give you the best view possible. We'll be recording the session anyway as well. We'll be putting it up on our YouTube channel. So if you want to share it with anybody else, feel free to get in touch, or it will be up on the channel at some stage. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand it over to Sarah, and good morning once more, Sarah.
Good morning, everybody. You can definitely hear us loud and clear now.
Yeah.
Hey, Howard.
Yeah.
No doubt about that. So good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our session this morning. So as Howard's mentioned, we're going to be covering our standard documents module, which is just a very simplistic application that allows you to store any type of document inside of Sage, whether that's against the nominal ledger, cash book, against stock, purchase ledger, sales ledger. We'll be starting the session off though this morning, concentrating on our full-blown document automation, which is the full OCR, which is Howard suggested is about eliminating the need for having to rekey in invoices and also customer purchase orders, as well as customer remittances and of course purchase credit notes. And then we'll be dipping into our invoice approval portal. For those of you who do have to have sign off of invoices, we've obviously got a much easier, much more efficient and quicker way of handling that. So Howard, first things first, can I just double check that my screen is being shared okay with everybody?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
perfect.
We can see it here.
Excellent. That's a good start. So as I said, we'll start off with document automation basically. So as you'll see on the far left-hand side, our document automation just basically sits as an integrated module within Sage 200. So as you'll see throughout the course of the demonstration this morning, there are a number of benefits by having that. Now, first things first, though, before we jump into the demo, let's just kind of explain the background of document automation. So the first thing that we do when it comes to document automation is we turn on the system for all of your suppliers on the purchase ledger, because it's much, much easier for us to do that. And of course, as you'll see, if I just dip into one account here, you then have the option to turn off document automation accordingly against each of your supplier accounts. And it's the same, by the way, as you'll see later on when we come on to the customer side of things. So as you'll see here, you've got the ability to disable. So it could be if you've got maybe some of your staff that are set up as supplier accounts for expense purposes, then clearly that's not something that's going to be relevant. So you can turn specific suppliers off. Now, at supplier level specifically, we also then have the ability to do a number of additional things. So the first of which is this little fine tuning, and that's really about ensuring when you get an invoice from your supplier, You're guaranteeing that they're a supplier in your purchase ledger, but it's about, I guess, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, just that little bit of extra security to make sure that they are definitely a valid supplier. So as such, what we can do is we have the ability to add in some extra information that we can check for you. Now, on top of the standard fields that you can see here, so things like your VAT number, account number, website, email address, you also have the ability to add in some extra information. So not only are we checking that that supplier exists on your purchase ledger, but we're also going to check any extra information that you want us to check, again, just to make sure that they're a valid supplier. Because as we know, there's some dodgy people out there at the moment, and that, you know, there's all sorts of things going on in the world at the moment. So we just want to make sure that they're a valid supplier. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing that we can do is, again, at supplier level, we can also check and validate specific things. So the first of which is that we can check on an invoice if there's a purchase order. Now, of course, that might be relevant for some suppliers. It might not be relevant for others, like utility organizations, or it might be that you just don't do purchase orders. We can also validate if you've got a GRN. And for those of you who already have our projects module, I know there's a couple of you on our session this morning, we can also validate if there's a project number on there as well. So again, bear in mind, as I mentioned, that's also at supplier level. Now, for those of you who perhaps don't use necessarily purchase orders, but you might use stock, we can also retrospectively add a stock item in when we receive a purchase ledger. So this is about saying, okay, well, we didn't generate a purchase order, but we want to be able to book in the stock. We can still do that for you. The other thing that we can do is we can split and train specific lines to read different VAT rates. So if you do happen to get invoices from your suppliers that have different VAT rates, we can train the system in order to do that. Now, one of the other things that we can do is set up some simplistic rules. So some great examples of these that we've had are where perhaps you have maybe a utility invoice and you might want to split that invoice against multiple cost center departmental codes. You have the ability to say, when we see X narrative or word or a narrative, that narrative needs to be posted to a specific nominal account. That's the kind of thing that we can do. So it's eliminating the need to have to go in and change those nominal accounts. So if you're regularly going in and changing nominal accounts, whether that's a utility bill or whether it could be because you're not doing purchase orders, this is again going to help with the efficiency and the time saving of processing those invoices. So it could be that you want it to be posted to a specific, I'll put my teeth in and try that one again, to a specific nominal account, or it could be you might want to split it against multiple nominal accounts if you wanted to. So as I said, those are just a couple of examples of where a rule might be appropriate for you, and you can set that up. So let's start to show you document automation in action, shall we? So all we basically do is we set up an email, and this is really how most customers tend to work, in all fairness, is they'll set up an email address where all of their suppliers will send their invoices and their credit notes through to. And similarly, if we're talking about customer purchase orders, as I'll come and show you later on, we can also convert a customer purchase order into a sales order. Similarly, you'll have an email address specifically set up for them as well. Now, you don't have to have an email address set up. So if you have, as an example, still paper invoices, then you would have to save those as a PDF. That's the only way that the system would work for you. But essentially, you could save it as a PDF and then do a document drop, as I'll come and show you in a moment. You can also upload documents as well. Now, it is like a child, though, to be fair. You do have to teach it where to look for the information in the first instance. So just to manage everybody's expectations, there is going to be an amount of input and investment in time up front. But of course, once you've spent that initial investment in time in setting up the templates for each of your suppliers, of course, it's going to save you a huge amount of time and effort then having to key in those invoices moving forward. So of course, the more invoices that you're processing on a monthly basis, of course, the more time and effort it's going to save. And it's also, of course, about eliminating, any errors that might be when you happen when you key those invoices in. So you'll see this is the screen that your staff are going to come into when it comes to processing those invoices or indeed credit notes. So you'll see at the top here, I've got a couple of different tabs and they're just flagging to me invoices as we've got here that are ready to process. So we've got 3 here that are ready to process. Perhaps if they do need attention, as I'll come and show you in a moment, I can drill into them and I can see where the problem may be. Where we've asked the system to check for a GRN, then we can flag if you haven't received a GRN. If it hasn't validated, it'll just pop it into that tab there. And then also come and show you in a moment. We can also lock these invoices and credit notes down with a query so nothing can be posted into Sage. Now, the way that this system works is that you need to have at least one scan and view documents license, which we'll come and show you in a little bit more depth and detail later on. So there's all sorts of other things that you can do with documents we'll talk about. So each of you users have to be a documents user license. Then you're accessing this module here, the document automation module, and then you buy a document automation bundle. And that's the bit that does the OCR, the reading of the information for you. Now, the way that the document automation bundle works is that you buy a bundle up front, and that could be from 1,000 up to, I think we've even got a 200,000 document automation bundle now. But we charge you per document, not per page, and they never run out. And no doubt if you get a quote from Howard, you'll see that the higher the bundle that you buy up front, the cheaper per document that it does work out. So, as I said, let's come and show you this in action. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a couple of different invoices, and we're going to show you a couple of different examples and a couple of different scenarios this morning. So the first scenario that I'm going to show you is where I have a supplier already set up, but I'm matching an invoice to that purchase order. And then we'll show you a second scenario where it's just simply a purchase ledger invoice, but the supplier isn't set up. So that's the first thing that's happening. It's just flagging to me, you don't have a data model set up. You don't have a trainee model set up and configured just yet for that particular supplier. So this is where I have to come and train it. So we can see that there's a supplier in existence. So we're happy with that. And all I simply do is come to the trainee model, and I just literally tell it where to look for the information. So that's where you need to look for the invoice number. That's where you need to look for the invoice date. So no doubt you have different suppliers and they'll put this information in different places. So that's essentially why we need to be teaching it for each supplier. That's where you need to be looking for the net value, the VAT, and if we do have any carriage, that's where you need to be looking for the carriage. That's where the total gross is. Now, I could, if I wanted to, I could teach it each line. I don't need to in this scenario because I've got a purchase order. But if it was a purchase ledger invoice as an example, and I wanted to use those rules, then I would simply teach it the first line, and then I've got a little utility where I click that button there, and it'll just automatically pick up all of the other lines for me. So I'm not actually having to teach it every single line. It's just the first line, and that will be sufficient for it to then know what the other lines look like. So all that's happening in the background now is it's creating that training model template for me, so that when we then come and process the secondary invoices, I'll come and show you in a second, it's going to look at that training model for me to know where to look for that information. And there we go. That's now valid. And as I'll come and show you in a moment, we've got 3 different ways in which this can then be posted into Sage. So I'll come and show you that in a second. Before we do that, though, I just want to come and quickly upload another invoice, just to show you how quick and easy this learns. Now, to be fair, it might be that you need to train it 2, 3, 4 times before it actually trains every single field. There we go. Look how quick and easy that was. Imagine the amount of time saving that's going to have for your business. Yes, I've spent some time teaching it where to look for the information, but moving forwards, all of those invoices that I receive from Ernie now, I'm not going to have to process manually. Now, in order for these to post into Sage, you have three options. The first is that we just have a little setting turned on in the background, which will then automatically post this invoice into Sage with, as you'll see in a moment, the attached invoice. So we're then storing that invoice alongside the transaction in the purchase ledger. So that's option number one. And obviously that's going to be the quickest and the most easiest way for you. The second way is that I can literally just click process automatically, and that will do exactly that. It will process it. As you can see now, it's complete and it's sitting inside of Sage. My third option is that I can process this manually. Now, before I do that though, I'm just going to show you a couple of other options which we have sitting inside of here. One of which is that if I did want to drill down to either amend or maybe change the purchase order, I can do all of that from within here. So I'm not having to come out of this screen to go into Sage purchase order processing. As you can see, this is standard Sage POP now. If I need to make any changes to this purchase order, I can do all of that from within here. And in fact, if I needed to confirm the GRN, as you might have spotted there, I've also got the ability to confirm goods received from here as well. Now, I've also got the ability to drill in to see the transaction inquiry screen in the supplier, but we'll come back to that in a second. So I'm going to show you the other way, which is processing manually. Now, this is typically an option where you might want to make some changes, such as maybe changing the nominal account, maybe changing the project. So you'll see the advantage of this is sitting inside a standard Sage screen now. So for those of you who are perhaps familiar with processing invoices and familiar with the standard Sage screen, this is on the left-hand side, this is just a standard Sage screen. You'll recognize that screen. So as I mentioned a moment ago, this is where perhaps you might want to make some changes, maybe to the nominal account. Maybe if you're using a projects module, perhaps you might want to change the project. This is still giving you that flexibility to do that. So even though we've used document automation to process the invoice, I've still got that flexibility. And I think we've got somebody on the session today that are using our fixed assets module. If you need to correlate this invoice to an asset, this is where it still gives you that capacity to link it to a new asset or link it as a maintenance asset as well. Now, you'll also see here that we've got this little tick box that's saying requires authorization. So that's where it's going to automatically push this, as you'll see later on, into our invoice approval module. So again, eliminating the need to be sending emails out or sending bits of paper all over the place. Now, for those of you who are perhaps using purchase order processing, we can set up a validation between the value of the purchase order and the GRN and the invoice. And you've then got the ability to set up a tolerance level. So it might be that you say, well, you know, as long as we've got an invoice that matches the purchase order, and perhaps if we're also approving our purchase orders, we don't need to approve our invoices, then it doesn't necessarily need to go back out for approval through the invoice module. So that's something that we can set up in the background. Otherwise, we just simply say everything's being pushed out for approval through the invoice module. So let's finish off this process, which is we're posting this onto Sage. So as you'll see now, that's completed. And if I drill into the supplier transaction inquiry screen, this is where you'll see our extra little column that says documents. And if I just open that up a little bit, there we go. So you'll see document count. There's the transaction that we've literally just processed, and there's our extra little column with our documents module. Now, this is our standard documents that I'll come and talk to you about later on, that allows us to attach any type of document anywhere inside of Sage. But if I click on that view documents, there we go. It's as simple as that. So I've now attached that invoice to that transaction specifically in the supplier ledger. So it makes it really simple for me to retrieve that document back basically through this screen. And in fact, once we post this invoice, that will also be available to view in the nominal ledger as well for you. And indeed, as you'll see later on, I can also attach documents in my nominal ledger as well. Now, you'll also see that this is locked this down with a little U for unauthorized. So even though we've posted this into the purchase ledger, and this is again another advantage of our solution and the fact that it's properly integrated, is that you have visibility of it in your ledger. You're not waiting for it to be authorized, but it won't appear in your suggested payments run. So don't worry that even though we've posted it into your ledger, that it's suddenly going to appear in your report for your payments. It's not going to until we fully authorize it, as I'll come and show you in a moment in the invoice module. So that's the document that's attached. Let's come and show you the other things that we can do now. So I'm going to show you the second example, which is me uploading just a normal purchase ledger invoice this time, but I don't actually have a supplier set up. So again, just to show you how quick this works. So I'm going to upload that one. Now, you'll see that not only do we not have a training model, but if I come to the account tab, this is where it's not recognized that against the purchase ledger. So this kind of comes back to that extra fine tuning that I was talking about earlier on. Not only are we checking, do they exist on the purchase ledger? What else is it that you want us to check? What extra bits and pieces do you want us to check on that against that supplier account? Now, if you bear with me, I'm just going to copy that email address and I'm just going to quickly set up Frank Incorporate against the supplier. And then again, we'll dip back into, of course, the document automation module and we'll process it. So let's set that up. And if I can spell properly, Frank Incorp, and let's copy that email address. So we've got something that it's recognizing. Now, you'll see in a second an extra little pop-up. This is actually our audit log that tracks me creating a supplier account or making any changes to pretty much anything inside of Sage, whether it's a credit limit on a supplier account or a customer account. So that's another little module that we have. More information on that on our website. There we go. So that's Frank Incorporate. I'm just going to switch off some validations. So I'm going to say, don't worry about checking a purchase order or a GRN, because clearly, as I've alluded to, this is just a normal purchase ledger invoice. So just so that we don't get validation queries popping up, I'm going to turn all of those off. Now, if we dip back into document automation now, you'll see we come back into that screen. And if I dip back into account there we go. So can you see that's how quick it works? So it's recognized the supplier and it's got a score of 1 now because it's matched the email address. So that's that validation that we're doing there, the checking and the fine tuning. So pretty much in the same way that we did the training for that previous invoice for Ernie Swinton, we're going to do exactly the same here. So we're going to tell it where to look for all of that information. But the difference, of course, is I don't need to be worrying about an email address, sorry, a purchase order number. All I'm going to be basically doing here is saying that's the net value, that's the tax, that's the total gross. And again, if we've got any carriage, that's where you need to be looking for that. Save and train. And again, that's now going to create that little training model in the background. And again, I'll just quickly upload another invoice so you can see how quickly this learns. So all we then do is, there we go, that's now valid. And of course, if I did have that setting turned on, I wouldn't actually need to do anything else. It would just automatically post it for me. But I'm just going to quickly upload another one. Now, of course, if you're using the automation in the background where you've got emails set up and you've got that posting automatically turned on, then I'm not even having to sit here watching the screen do this. It's going to do all of that in the background for me. And there we go. How quick was that? So again, huge amount of time saved and me having to key in the invoices. And of course, that elimination of potentially any errors in keying data in. And again, I can just process that automatically. And that will then post, there we go, into Sage for me. Now, let's show you another option, which is, I mentioned that you've got the ability to drill down to see. So we've shown you drilling down to see the transaction inquiry screen, but I can also drill into the standard supplier screen. So this is a screen that you recognize already. So if I did want to drill into the supplier screen I could do. And again, there's our little documents module. So you've also got the ability to attach any type of document against the supplier account as well if you wanted to. Now, whilst this one is showing as live and valid, I might not actually want it to post into Sage just yet. So it might be that I'm waiting, I've got a query on that. So this is where I could actually prevent this from posting into Sage just by simply marking it with a little query. So all I'm going to do is say that's marked with a query and I'm awaiting some information. I could assign it to one of the team in the finance department. I'm not going to, I'm just going to leave it in the list. And there we go. That's now locked down. So that can't actually post into Sage until such times as we clear it. And it's literally as simple as clear query. And there we go. That's now ready to be posted. So I can filter these invoices by supplier, by the document types, even by the sender's name and email address if I wanted to. But that is document automation for purchase invoices and credit notes. It's as simple as that. Now, before we come on to the invoice approval, I just want to show you how this can also work for customer purchase orders. So if you do have customer purchase orders and you're pushing those into sales order processing, it's exactly the same process. So if I just refresh that screen for a second, and all I'm going to do is upload a couple of documents. If I can open that up just a little bit, there we go. So again, you can of course have these emailed in, but if I just upload Abby's purchase order. So the only difference this time is that I am going to train the line because of course we need that information to be posting into Sage for us. So we'll have a customer's purchase order, but of course it needs attention, and that's because we need to train it. So all I'm going to do, as I said, is say that's the requested date. And if we scroll down the page, that's where we need to be telling the system to look for the customer's purchase order number. And this is where I simply train the line. So I'm going to say that's the code. That's the description. And this is where I was talking about earlier on. I don't actually need to be teaching it every single line. I just simply teach it the first line, and then the little utility on the right hand side, that little button there, will then just automatically train every single line underneath it. So line net value, and then very simply, we have our total net, our VAT where appropriate, and our total gross. And again, this is where I was talking about earlier on, if you have different VAT registrations on the purchase ledger, you could teach it each line. So I'm going to save and train it. And that's now going to create my training model. And as you'll see in a second, I can then generate a sales order off the back of that. And I'll just very quickly upload another one as well, just to show you how quick that is. Now that's showing that it needs attention. So why is it telling me that it needs attention? If I come into the validation tab, this is simply where it's summarizing for me where there might be some issues. So it's just telling me that the requested delivery date is today. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And I don't have enough free stock and I don't have a price configured in my price book. That's fine. I don't need to worry about that. I'm just going to process that automatically. And that's now going to generate my sales order for me. So this is going to capture all of that information, and it's then going to generate the sales order without me having to key in a sales order. And as I said, what I'll do is I'll quickly upload another one just to show you how quick this learns again from the creation side of this. So I'm just going to say date promised. I'll say today, that's a fast delivery. Yes, please. Save. Now, I've got quite a few extra pop-ups on my screen because we have a lot of other modules that we do, which won't be relevant to you. So ignore these extra pop-ups. So I think I've got quite a lot turned on. Project, no, I don't want to create a project. I think I've got a works order even. So yeah, I don't want to create a works order. And there we go. There's my sales order generated. So I haven't had to key that in. And if we quickly upload another one now, Again, now that I've trained the system, as I mentioned, I'm not going to have to train it again. It might be that there's one field it doesn't recognize, in which case you're just literally teaching it that one field. You're not teaching everything all over again. And there we go. Again, it's just telling me that there's some invalid things, some couple of things that need attention, but it's exactly the same as before. So there's nothing that I'm having to actually train it. So again, all I'm going to do is click process automatically, and that's now going to generate my sales order for me. So again, a huge amount of time being saved. So if you're getting a lot of customer purchase orders coming in that you're processing manually, this can save your team an awful lot of time. Sorry, excuse me.
It's like I mean, we mentioned at the start, Sarah, you know, it's people fall into a lot of manual work. I know that in some cases they always feel there should be something here that can sort this out, you know. And that's why we always say we try to talk to us as much as you can. If you're not sure, you know, either there's something there within the package, or, you know, there's something out of the box like this, although it's, as you showed the configuration of it, you know, once set up, then it saves an awful lot of time.
Exactly. I won't go through remittances, but obviously it does remittances again, and that can then do the auto allocations, but it's a similar sort of process. But so it does an awful lot. It's not just about invoices, it's about custom remittances and purchase orders as well. So you can get an awful lot of benefit out of that one solution. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to dip into the invoice approval module now. Now, whilst I'm calling it invoice approval module, in actual fact, as I think Howard alluded to earlier on, it does far more than just invoice approval, as you'll see on the left-hand side in the menu option. So we're just purely concentrating on invoice approval today for you. But if you feel that any one of these other modules might be of interest to you, then obviously let Howard and the team know, and we can always organise a one-to-one session for you. So the other modules include purchase requisition. So that's about generating a purchase requisition, checking budgets, whether that's against projects or against a nominal account, routing for approval, and then generating a purchase order in Sage Pop. We can also do project requisitions. That's almost kind of like a shopping basket list. We can do sales quotes, sales orders, sales returns. We're obviously going to pick up invoice approval this morning. We can do expenses, so that will post to the purchase ledger, as well as projects. We can do timesheets, again, that post to projects, as well as holiday requisitions and approvals and HR and absences. And if you use one of our modules and you also use projects, we've also got a projects view through here, as well as construction, which allows you to do subby purchase orders, as well as the ability to do supplier applications and retentions. So let's concentrate for the purpose of today on the invoice approval module for you. So I'm just going to very simply log in as one of the managers. And all that's happened for me in the background is that it will have automatically created a little email notification with a little hyperlink in that email to tell me that there's some invoices awaiting my approval. And we can consolidate those notifications. So don't worry if you get lots and lots of emails that, you know, lots and lots of invoices that your managers are going to get ping, ping, ping. We can consolidate maybe just to send maybe one notification a day as an example. So that's something that we can talk to you about. But very simply, all I do is click on approve, and then I get a list of all the invoices awaiting my authorization. So again, no paper trail, no having to email these out, no having to leave invoices on people's desks. And there's the few invoices that we've just processed. So that Frankencorp that we just processed a second ago with the attachment, so I can see the invoice in front of me. And then at this point, I can either edit it and maybe change the project or the nominal if that's relevant, although we can lock that down if you don't want your users to change that, or I can simply approve or reject. So here or here. Now, I've also got the ability to hold the invoice as well. So I can either tell other members of staff in the business that it's just been put on hold, or I can send a quick email notification out to the supplier to tell them that it's on hold. It's just a really simple way of basically saying to them, don't bother chasing us because the invoice is on hold. So there's no point in you chasing us. So just a little quick comms out to them that can be sent out. Now, the only status in here that will change anything for you back in Sage is that little approve button. So once we've clicked on approve, that will automatically take that little U for unauthorized that you saw against the supplier transaction inquiry screen. It just takes that off automatically. And that's the point where it will then appear in your suggested payments routine report. But that's only when everybody's approved it. So as you'll see shortly, when we come and give you a bit of a taster on the approval workflow, you can have as many people in that approval workflow as you like. So I'm going to approve this now, and that could go to another person, another 2 or 3 people if you like, but you'll see it's now disappeared off my screen. And if I come to that second one, again, this is just flagging to me that it's over budget. So where we're looking at budgets as well, it's just checking budgets for me. But again, there's the Ernie Swinton one. And again, I can approve that. And that, again, can go to somebody else, or it will release it back into Sage for me. Now, this can also process credit notes as well. So we can show you credit notes as well as invoices. But essentially, it's as simple as that. But we can also use the same module. We don't charge you any more money for this to use for suggested payments approval as well. So all that's going to happen is that you're going to run your standard Sage suggested payments report. But instead of printing that report, and as I heard the other day, in fact, there's been a couple of customers recently I've spoken to where they also then print the invoices to attach to that report. What a waste of time for them, bless them. We can give you visibility of those through here without you having to waste time and money printing those reports. They'll just simply appear through here. So that's one of the advantages of having all of this through the approvals portal, is that you're not having to print the invoices. You can refer back to the invoices through here, but you also, of course, have an audit trail, something that the auditors tend to love when they're coming in and having a visit to your office, the fact that you can see who's approved them and when and who by. So I can see all of that through here. So I've got my invoices that I can drill into. I can see the value that I need to be paying. So every single invoice, or I could actually just simply drill into these and say, well, actually, I want to edit the amount that I want to release for payment, and I might want to change that value. So you still have the flexibility to change the value that's going to be released for payment in here as well, if you wanted to. And then all that happens when you finally approve everything, it will then just pop it back into Sage and you just do your normal bank's payment routine. It's as simple as that, basically. So this is really about eliminating, as I said, the need to print the suggested payments report, print off invoices, having it all automated through the approvals portal. So there we go. This is where, as I was saying a moment ago, you could actually change the value. So if I want to release a different amount, I can do through here. And then if I scroll all the way down, this is where I can say pay none or approve all, and it just pops it back into Sage. As simple as that. Now, before we dip back into Sage, I just want to very, very quickly show you an example of an approval workflow, just to give you a bit of a feel on how this can work. So I've obviously mentioned the fact that this isn't just for invoices. So of course, if you were to use this for any of our other modules, then you do have the capacity to set up an approval workflow specific to that document type. If you have multiple companies, you've also got the ability to set up a workflow specific to the company. And then in the case of the invoices, you could either have a unique approval workflow by nominal cost center departmental code or by supplier, or the other option is you could also do it by project as well. So that could give you a unique approval workflow by any one of those options. And then very simply, all we do is we set up your approvers with their own maximum approval limit. And as I mentioned, you can have as many people in that approval workflow as you like. We don't limit the number of users. And you can either have a very simple workflow where it just go through to one person at a time, or it can be sent to a group of people all at the same time if you wanted it to, and maybe one out of the group needs to approve it. So Obviously, that's something that we'll talk to you in a lot more depth and detail if you decide to go ahead with this. That's something that we can do for you. And we've also got the ability to have a little out of office configuration. So if I am normally somebody that approves these items, but I don't know, I go on annual leave or I'm off sick and therefore I can't cover these approvers, then I just literally go, I'm out of office, choose somebody different, we'll choose Jane, and it just reroutes anything that's already awaiting approval, as well as anything new, through to that new designated person. And then when I come back, I switch it off and then it just reroutes everything back to me again. So it just saves you having to set up a brand new approval workflow just to cover those instances, basically. It's just a really simple, quick way to cover those absence periods. So that's the approvals portal. I'm just going to very quickly finish off back into Sage on the standard documents module for you. So I mentioned we've talked about document automation, but you can also buy the standard documents module on its own if you wanted it to. So I talked about the fact that you can attach any type of document pretty much anywhere inside of Sage, whether it's against a purchase order, a sales order, nominal ledger, purchase ledger. But if I come into the nominal ledger, which is usually a good example of where people want to attach documents, you'll see it's that same documents column that you saw earlier on. And if we come to my depreciation of assets, same button again that you saw earlier on, you can call your different documents anything that you like. And I have a couple of ways that I can attach documents. I can either have a little desktop scanner, pop my paper document in my desktop scanner, click scan, and then this will whiz through the machine and attach automatically. The second way is that I can go to a network scanner and then just simply attach, and that will then attach to that transaction. Or the third way is if I just quickly open up Outlook, is that I can drag and drop either the whole of my email with the attachments or just the attachments, as you'll see now. So that will now attach to that transaction for me. So various different ways, as I said, that you can attach and view a document. But the other thing that you can do as part and parcel of documents is document distribution. So what all this basically means is when you're sending documents out, we can automate emailing them out, but also automate what else you might want to send out at the same time. So if I just come to my, bear with me 2 seconds, come to the right place, you've got the option to decide who you want it to go through to and how it goes out. Do you want it to send straight away, or do you want it to go into your drafts folder? And what else do you want to go out at the same time? So this is the big difference between the standard Sage automation, is that you literally, it's just one document. Whereas with ours, you can say, well, actually, we also want to send a header page, a background page, maybe even our terms and conditions, but maybe some extra documentation as well. So that could include, if you bear with me 2 seconds, let me come and show you against a stock item. And if I come to my good old coffee machine, as poor old Howard knows,
Yeah,
is
we've
my
seen it a few times.
go-to. Hey, Howard. So if I come and find my good old coffee machine, you'll see this could be something like an image of the item that you're buying, or maybe a quote to a customer. Or it could be maybe some instructions, a manual that you want to automatically send out at the same time. So it's just a much more professional way of sending documentation out, making sure that it's, whoever's sending the documentation out all looks standard. So if I come and show you in our document distribution, I've just said, these are all the documentations that I have available. We've got a product specification and an image of a coffee machine. And when we send out a purchase order, that's basically what we send out at the same time. But that could be, as I said, when we send out a quote, what else do we want to send out when we send a quote out? And in true Blue Peter style, as they used to say when I was a kid, and I'm showing my age again here. Let me show you what that looks like. So this is actually a dispatch note going out with the image of the espresso machine, but that could be a purchase order. And for those of you who are maybe using our barcoding, documents will also link to barcoding. So we can take an image of an item as it's booked in and store that against the purchase order. Similarly, before we dispatch something, we can take a photo of the image and store that against the sales order. But if you're using our courier integration, we've also got the ability to send out the tracking notes as well. So not only are we sending out the dispatch note and the image of the item, but we're also sending out the tracking notes from, in this case, DPD as well at the same time. So you basically determine what you want to send out against the document type, and we just automatically email it basically for you. So that's me done. I don't know if there's any
Very neat, Sarah.
questions. Howard, has anybody popped any
Not
questions
just
in
yet. If anybody wants to sort of bring anything up to Sarah and what she's actually shown you there a second ago, please feel free to drop it into the chat or the Q&A. Just to go back to, again, like I said at the intro at the very start, I'd always encourage anybody here who's attending, you know, to just revise any of the manual sort of effort that you're putting in on your existing copy of Sage at this present moment. Always open up the dialogue, talk to us, ask questions. You know, we can give you sort of short answers if there's something there that we actually know about within what you currently have. We'll make it very obvious to you. It might be just as simple as an update to the existing copy of Sage you have, or just an upgrade to the latest version of it. You know, please do ask us questions all the time so that we can keep you up to speed and save you a bit of time and effort and money. Other than that, I mean, it's nice to see that, you know, again, I sort of mentioned it as well in the intro, you can see that the Sicon Documents element of it can be factored into other areas that some other customers are using. Some other customers are using projects or the fixed assets, and it's nice to show that it's actually tracked all the way through. Where you can actually access the collected documents via the individual transactions, no matter where you go. So it's just something to be aware of going forward. So we don't really have any questions coming in here currently at the moment.
Okay.
But if there's something that you do think of later on, do by all means, you know, keep in touch. I'll leave my contact details there on screen for a few minutes. Get in touch with us. We'd be happy to sort out an actual one-to-one meeting. If needs be, I'm happy enough to call out on site and actually just take a look at what you're actually doing to get a proper visual and give you advice as well. But other than that, I'd just say, Sarah, thank you very much for today. That was very informative.
My pleasure.
I have seen this demonstration a few times. I always pick up something new from it each and every time, which is great. So look, without anything else to add to it, just thanks very much, Sarah. Thanks very much for everybody attending here today. And look, hopefully I'll talk to you very soon in the near future.
All right. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.